Okay, now you can start.
All right, 1 second. All right, good evening, everyone. My presentation this evening is on moral leadership. All right. Okay, so before I continue, I really think that we need to establish exactly what moral leadership is. So what I went ahead and do was broke it down. I broke it down into its individual terms so as to give everyone a clear understanding of what moral leadership is. All right, because I think everyone would have heard the term before, but we may or may not have a genuine understanding as to what it actually is. So moral, of or relating to principles of right or wrong behavior, conforming to a standard of right behavior, expressing or teaching a conception of right behavior. And then we go on to lead, which means to direct on a course or in a direction, or to direct the activity, operations, or performance of. Leadership, of or relating to principles of right or wrong behavior, the act or instance of leading. This is according to Harold Kuntz and Cyril O'Donnell. It can also be defined as the capacity to lead. So therefore, when you surmise everything, moral leadership is the provision of values or meaning for people to live by, inspiration to act, and motivation to hold oneself accountable. This is according to the World Economic Forum. All right, so we would have all heard the terms morals and ethics, but do we actually understand what these terms are? So before I continue, I'd just like to say that they are very closely related and there is a degree of overlap between the two. So ethics, derived from the Greek word ethos, meaning habit, custom, disposition, or character, would refer to the rules, laws, or regulations which are externally based. And I want you all to pay attention to that word externally based. A typical example would include the code of conduct at a school, workplace, or other institution. The term also encompasses principles from which the very essence of numerous religions, which form the very essence of numerous religions. For example, the 10 Commandments. So ethics refer to external aspects of the environment. Morals, derived from the Latin word mors, which means custom, refers to the intrinsic principles of an individual, which he or she may consider right or wrong. In this respect, the topic of morals is highly subjective. Okay, so being the mathematician that I am, I had to squeeze some math in here in some way, form, or fashion. So we have the universal set of ethics and morals. Ethics, external rules, which may vary between environments. Morals, personal principles, which rarely change. And when they intersect, we have right or wrong conduct. So let me outline the distinction. The law explicitly states that criminals should be punished for their crimes. A defense attorney is bounded by his ethics as a competent lawyer to defend said criminals, even though his morals tell him that his defendant is in fact guilty. It can then be inferred that ethics are not always moral. A lawyer may tell the court that his client is guilty. In doing so, he is moving in alignment with his moral compass to see that justice is served. However, this is a breach of attorney-client privilege, which is highly unethical. Okay, everyone, so I want to focus on moral leadership today, all right? Does anyone know who this gentleman is? Anyone at all? Hello, you all hearing me?
Yeah, but I really don't know who it is.
Yeah, I'm not
I don't know who it is.
No problem. You all get medals of participation then. So this gentleman is Mr. Mark Foley. So let's have a rundown of who he is. Former member of the U.S. House of Representatives. He represented Florida's 16th congressional district as a Republican from 1995 to 2006. He resigned from Congress in 2006, September, following a sex scandal involving sending inappropriate texts to underage boys. The Florida Department of Law closed the case on account of insufficient evidence. But this is the kicker right here. He would have justified his actions in November of 2008, where he was stating that the 17-year-old boys were almost men. Ethical or unethical? Right. Does anyone know who this person is? Anyone?
No.
Oh?
No.
Sorry. Nope.
All right, cool. I'll give you all a hint.
No.
He's from Russia.
Nope.
All right, no problem. All right, so this gentleman is Mr. Leonid Dodozonovich Reiman, Russian businessman and government official, former Minister of Communications and Information Technology of the Russian Federation. He is accused of having used money laundering schemes in order to acquire at least 25% of Megafon's shares. Megafon is Russia's third largest mobile network operator. He also used illegal means to grant an operating license to Telecom 21, of which he is a financial beneficiary. Again, very immoral. And anyone knows who this lady is? You all should know who she is. I mean, come on. Anyone at all?
Angela Merkel.
Aye, beautiful. Frau Angela Merkel. So she became the first female chancellor in 2005. She would have topped Forbes' list for the most powerful women in the world for 7 consecutive years. After being appointed as the Minister of Women and Youth in 1991, her efforts resulted in the formation of the Equal Opportunities Act, which was designed to improve the status of female professionals. She ensured that all children had a place in kindergarten. During the Syrian war, she became known as the Refugee Chancellor, opening the borders to Syrian refugees. And she was also dubbed by CNN as the moral leader of the West. Does anyone know who this fine gentleman is? Anyone at all? Anyone? Okay, no problem. No problem. No problem. No problem at all, but you all are very familiar with his products. This is Mr. Jeff Swartz, former president and CEO of Timberland Boots. He enforces the practice of community service amongst his employees. As a matter of fact, he gives employees time off to do community service. He believes in uplifting people. He even goes as far as ensuring that potential senior employees do at least a day of community service prior to getting the job. He basically wants to see the way you function in a quote-unquote medial position because he wants to see your heart. His moral standing placed Timberland Company on Fortune 100's best companies to work for in America. He immediately had the company sever ties with APC Clothing founder Jean Totio after he made racially charged comments at a fashion show. Okay, everyone, so we're going to look at the ethical climate in US business. And I want you all to pay attention to the fact that I used a $sign instead of the S. So at least that should tell you where we are going. So we're looking at the consequences of ethical lapses. As with many other places in the world, ethical lapses occur at every level, almost every level of the company. But the leaders face the greatest amounts of scrutiny. Unethical and immoral behavior can indeed lead to severe consequences for a company, such as sharp declines in moral trust and performance among employees. One such consequence is the loss of customers, as evidenced by the mass desertion of customers from the Arthur Andersen firm, when it was found guilty of obstruction of justice by destroying a lot of documents relating to Enron. Scandals such as these force job seekers into doing their own background checks into the ethical standing of companies. On the topic of moral leadership in the US, personal weakness and self-interest have been found to be the biggest obstacles as opposed to full-scale corruption. Everybody wants to look good. People want to cut costs and even increase profits. And these have been shown to have a direct impact on the moral ethical standing of people. For example, Jason Blair, he was a former New York Times journalist, but he was found to commit numerous acts of plagiarism, journalistic fraud, and he even went as far as falsifying reports of him being in places covering stories when in fact he was actually not in those places. All right. So what ended up happening is that after 4 years and over 600 articles, he had to resign in 2003. According to Harvard Business School professor Richard Tedlow, Life is lived on a very slippery slope. It takes a person of good character to know what lines you don't cross. So what leaders do to make things go wrong? It all comes from within. It is the behavior of leaders that matters the most. Carrying out their roles and functions from a place of greed and selfishness, leaders can cause many employees to perceive such conduct as acceptable. So we're looking at Enron again, or shining example of immorality. Senior executives were blatantly arrogant and hubristic when it came to personal gain and success. Said execs went as far as blatantly disregarding the rules and policies geared towards honor and fairness, or as we say locally, they eat our food. So this is a table I would have extracted from the textbook that compares the ethical to the unethical leader, and it's clear to see the distinct difference. The unethical, arrogant and self-serving. The ethical possesses humility. The unethical practices deception. The ethical is honest and straightforward. The unethical breaches agreements. The ethical fulfills commitments, and the list goes on. So we get in a clear sense of what the tenets of moral leadership actually are. Honest words, and this came from an employee at Enron, a young employee. It was easy to get into while everyone else is doing it. Maybe it isn't so bad. My response, seriously. So how do we act like moral leaders? Again, this is another table extracted from the text. We are to develop, articulate, and uphold high moral principles. Focus on what is right for your organization as well as all the people involved. And I think this is very important because all of us as tertiary level students, it's highly likely that some of us, if not all of us, are going to obtain managerial positions in our careers after having left school. Some of us may even have positions of leadership right now, be it in the home or be it in church, wherever. But you need to ensure that you have good moral standing. Focus on people, focus on building people, focus on empowering those in your sphere of influence. Do not start from a position of selfishness and greed because things can only go down from there. Look at number 9, for example. Treat everyone with fairness, dignity, and respect, from the man who's sweeping the floor to the one who makes decisions for the company. Do the right thing in both your private and professional life, even if no one is looking. And as I always say, your reputation precedes you to the point that people could hear about you in countries or places that you may never see. So how do we become moral leaders? We can now say with great certainty that a leader's personal level of moral development has great impact on said leader's capacity to make morally correct choices. Moral leadership is about distinguishing wrong from right, seeking that which is just, honest, and good. It is about the right conduct in its practice. Moral leadership, and pay attention to this, y'all, this is very important. Moral leadership is also able to add value to the lives of others. The opposite is also very true. Immoral leadership only takes away from its followers for personal gain. In worst cases, immoral leadership takes away life itself, as exemplified by the likes of Cambodia's Prexbov, also known as Pol Pot, whose actions resulted in the deaths of millions. So, Prexbov, commonly known as Pol Pot, was a communist political leader whose actions resulted in the deaths of up to 2 million people by starvation, overwork, and even execution. According to American psychologist Lawrence Kohlberg's The Cognitive Developmental Approach to Moral Education, moral growth and development can be broken down into 3 stages as follows. So we have 3 different stages of moral leadership. We have the pre-conventional, follows rules to avoid punishment, acts in own interests, blind obedience to authority for its own sake. I can speak very personally into the pre-conventional stage. I am now a firefighter, and a lot of times we may be tasked with doing things that we may not necessarily agree with. We have a policy whereby we can challenge an instruction if it is illegal. So for example, you know a building is going to come tumbling down, an officer tells you to go in there and get to work, you can legally refuse if you believe your life is in danger. I would have also been exposed to this kind of thing, having served in the British military for a while. You will be given things to do that you do not necessarily agree with, even things that may not line up with your morality, but you follow the rules to avoid punishment. Level 2, the conventional, lives up to expectations of others, fulfill duties and obligations of social systems to uphold laws. And then we have the post-conventional level. This is where you follow internalized universal principles of justice and right, balances concern for self with concern for others and the common good. You act in an independent and ethical manner regardless of the expectations of others. And this is what we all need to strive for, doing what is right in the face of resistance, doing what is right by considering others, putting others first, put ourselves last. And that's the end of my slideshow, y'all. Thank you very much. Hello, you all hearing me?
Yes.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
hear.
I was trying to turn on the
Yeah.
mic.
So now you'll be setting up for Monica.
Yes, correct.
That was really well put
It was
together.
really good.
Yeah,
It was good.
It's not finished yet, guys. Wait a minute.
Where the stars?
Yeah, boss. Where the stars? Oh,
I'll email them to you all. Everyone gets a medal of participation. And who answered the one with Angela Merkel?
That was me.
Okay, you're going to get a gold star. You earned it.
Yay.
I'll just take the participation medal, is fine.
No problem at all. All right, you can go ahead.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. My name is Nikhila Maniket, and I am following up on Conroy's part of the presentation of moral leadership and courage, and I will be focusing on courage this afternoon. I would like to say, in the face of possible ridicule, leaders sometimes have to reach deep to find the strength and courage to resist the temptation to fall into negative patterns within an organization and to stand up for moral principles. We live in a time where in large organizations, the importance of courage is obscured and weakened to a matter of simply getting along, fitting in, and doing whatever brings promotions and raises. It's gotten to a point where persons has forgotten even the meaning of courage itself, of the word courage. It has become in most cases so far gone, one might wonder, how or why is courage so integral in being ethical, and where can leaders find courage when it's needed? In this part of the presentation, I will be dissecting leadership courage by examining its nature and discussing the ways courage is expressed in organizations. So may I please have the next slide? Okay, so what is courage? Thank you. Courage is both moral and practical for leaders. Okay, right. A lack of courage allows for greed and self-interest to overcome concern and for common good. For years, a misconstrued ideology fueled a flawed maintenance of stability and abundance that in turn misled American businesses, or even businesses in general, into thinking that courage isn't needed in the business world. The lesson that executives learned over the years were, don't fail, let someone else take the risk, or be careful and make mistakes. However, such teaching is no longer beneficial. Fearlessness is, so in courage, you must be fearless. In having courage to be ethical, you must be fearless. And as many people experience, all types of fears, from fears of death to making mistakes, failure, embarrassment, change, loss of control, loneliness, pain, uncertainty, fears of abuse, rejection, and fears of even success for some people. And it says that courage is the ability to act in spite of doubt or fear. For courage doesn't mean the absence of those human feelings. So essentially what I was trying to get across is that we all have fear. There's no doubt that it's going to be there, even in a business world where you have to make the decision to be ethical or these things. It's something that we all feel, and it, like I said, it's going to be there. So you have to be able to be ethical in spite of all of those things. So, like I said, it's natural for you to feel those things, and for when you're taking risk, or when risks are involved. Some of the risks can be the loss of job or losing acceptance of peers. And in organizations, when somebody sees something that is being done that is wrong, they would prefer to either just conform to what is going on around them, or they just won't say anything because they're scared to be ridiculed by their peers or workers. May I please have the next slide? Right. Courage also means accepting responsibility. Persons who are willing to step up and take personal responsibility make a real difference in the world. Somebody saying something? I think I heard somebody say something. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't Sir making
No, it's not me. Somebody might have their
It sounded like it was feedback on your
Yeah.
end.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay. Some people just let life happen around them. Leaders, however, make things happen. So that's also like taking responsibility. And courageous leaders create opportunities to make a difference in the organization and communities. One societal example of taking personal responsibility in a community is, and this example was taken from the text, the DAFT text. So during the civil rights movement in South, in a 16-year-old Barbara Jones led students of her segregated high school on a 2-week strike after a bus full of white students refused to pick her up. So obviously she was of a different color, and they you know how all segregation and stuff was. So, and after a while, the NAACP stepped in and helped the young people sue for an integrated school. Because of this, the Johns family home was then burned down that same year, and children as young as grade schoolers who also took a stand were jailed for protesting in the segregation of lunch counters, community centers, and sports leagues. Courage is taking responsibility for your personal failures and mistakes without shifting the blame on others. So, and then I can have the next slide. Right, so that is moral leadership. Moral leadership brings about self-awareness and leaders understanding themselves and building relationships. One second, just making sure I have everything. Self-awareness is being able to understand personal strengths, weaknesses, what they believe in, and non-conformity. So you first have to understand oneself before you make the attempt to understand the practices of somebody else. So you have to make sure that you know what you're doing and you know what you're about before you try to, either call out somebody or such. And an example of this is when William Peace had to initiate. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, sorry. Before that, as the example was for the moral leadership and personal courage. An example of this in the practice is when William Peace had an initiative to lay off a general manager of the synthetic fuels division of Westinghouse House. To make the division attractive to buyers, executives made a painful decision to cut any jobs not considered essential. Peace had the courage to deliver the news about layoffs personally. He took some painful blows in the face-to-face meetings he held with the co-workers that he had to they had to lay off because of the business that was, going down. And despite him laying off people were not welcoming to the fact that they were being fired, but just the fact that he was willing to listen to them vent or be angry about being laid off. So that's about building relationships in the organization. So and then afterwards they found a buyer for the business, and he got the opportunity to bring some of those people back on, and they were not so concerned about being fired, but they did actually come back because of how ethical and how he was, and he could have let them vent and stuff. So they loved his approach on how they got laid off. So opposing unethical conduct. Okay, so whistleblowing. A whistleblower is often referred to as a tattletale. Does everybody know what a tattletale is? Because you had plenty of that growing up. Your cousins, your sister, your brother telling on you.
Yeah, my sister.
Yes. and someone who can't be trusted, ironically. So it's the reporting of illegal and immoral, unethical practices in the organization. In most cases, people view this type of person as a tattletale, almost someone who can't shut their mouth. For example, Colleen Rowley, the Minneapolis FBI staff attorney whose whistleblowing letter called attention to agency shortcomings that may have contributed to a terrorist strategy, a colleague of Rowley said she always does what is right, even when no one is watching. So it's like a whistleblower more or less tries to be discreet in tattletale, but sometimes it often backfires on them like a lot, especially if it's executives or heads that are doing the wrongdoing. They sometimes it results in here it says being severely ridiculed and loss of jobs, and it can cause emotional strain. So while whistleblowers can suffer emotionally and financially because of they spoke of unethical, illegal things that goes on as a result of losing their job and being verbally attacked by co-workers or those that were caught. The rights of a whistleblower. Yes, a whistleblower has rights. It's because when I was doing a lot of research, because I wanted to get a little more insight on it, the United States Department of Labor actually has a whole whistleblower protection program. That was really it was really eye-opening to me because I didn't think it was this serious. But in some cases, a whistleblower can potentially, their lives can be potentially be at risk, because I know I've watched a lot of movies when so people call them like informers and stuff. They want to take them out and all these different things. So it's not just being ridiculed or being verbally attacked and stuff. In some cases, people try to physically harm a whistleblower. So so also the whistleblower has the right to be safe in a workplace, and they also has the right to contest any wrongful action taken toward them. Like for instance, if they got fired, obviously you got fired because you were telling on somebody who was doing something wrong. So you can go to the courts and tell them that you think that you was unfairly treated, and in some cases they would either pay you off, like I read, they will either pay you off or you will be able to get back your job. And they must ensure that you are safe in your workplace. So developing moral leadership and personal courage. May I please have the next slide? Yes. So how to find personal courage? So we really getting a lot deeper into it, because everybody's saying, oh yes, you must have courage to do this and that, but how do you really find it? So they said, we have been taught to follow the rules and go along in things with order to be liked or accepted. I believe that it is time to change that. So to be able to do that, you need to be able to step out of your comfort zone, live courageously, and detach learned fears, like I just said. When you are taught, okay, okay, well, everybody is doing this, but everybody is doing this over here, so this is the way of life, this is that, this is rule, this is law, there's nothing else outside of this, and you choose to be brave enough, you choose to have that courage to stand for things that you believe in and stuff. That is where you find true courage. That is how you find it. So true courage really comes from within. I apologize, that's my phone. Yes, so how to unlock courage. You can commit to things that you believe in, connect with others, welcome failure, and when you unlock courage, that will help you to harness anger, but we'll get into that further on. So, may I have the next slide, please? Oh, no, this is it, sorry. Belief in a higher purpose. Okay. Standing for what you believe in, despite of what people may think or say. A higher purpose overthrows, keyword, overthrows the need to conform. And I took this example from the text. I took the one for business and just the one for societal. Hope, I believe that's the lady's name, Hope, has a food program to serve pregnant women, new mothers, and their children in Detroit. Soon realizing that hunger was just a symptom of a larger problem, she expanded the organization as a civil rights group to try to bridge the economic and racial divides in her city. Over the years, she has received tons of hate mail and her offices firebombed and been threatened regularly with bodily harm, but that did not stop her. So despite all of those things, imagine somebody trying to harm you physically for what you believe in. So that's why I say having a strong belief in a higher purpose, despite what anybody thinks, often brings success, because negativity and hate does not last for long. It really does not last for long. So all you have to do is to be positive, stay focused, and to have the courage to believe in doing what's right. If you believe what you're doing is okay. Excuse the cough. I know coughing these days very hard. A business example. A guy by the name Lauren Fish, chairman, president, and CEO of Citizens Bank, has built the organization into the 8th largest commercial banking company in the United States. But he says, but he says, if we just make money, we'll fail. When I read that, I thought that it was really strange coming from the owner of a bank, because I didn't really want to get into all of the things of a bank and the things that I don't trust about banks, but it's like, most of the times people think banks just want to take your money, and there's a lot of interest and stuff and all of these different things. So hearing somebody who has a bank say, if we just make money, we'll fail, was very eye-opening to me. He said, Fish is known for his volunteer efforts and commitment to the community and his unconventional approach to operating a bank efficiently, but with heart, has created banking powerhouse. In his career, Fish has experienced both tremendous success and downright failure, but he has maintained the courage to pursue a vision that business is much more about doing good in the world as it is about making money. And I think that is a mentality that all business people or all leaders should have going into any venture. Okay, may I have the next slide, please? Excuse my gosh. Drawing strength from others. Okay, so while courage does come from within, sometimes if you have that help or just some people who support you in something that gives you the courage to want to do more. So drawing strength from others can come from also caring about people, because you can have supporters that are just supporting you, but there's a different connection to people that you care about, and that helps you to go even harder for them, and also having support from others, so they both go hand in hand. So caring about others. Love is the most component ingredient in courage. The most potent ingredient in courage. For example, someone who is willing to risk their own life for a person who they love. For instance, a parent who may be able to risk their life for a child. I would like to say that every parent will, have the heart or have the courage to be able to do that. But in this instance, as we're speaking about from a business standpoint, willing to, as a leader, willing to take risks and willing to take risks for the sake of your organization or for the organization. Having support from others. People who are alone in the world are less likely to take risks because they have a lot more to lose. But when you have people who genuinely support you, it makes taking risks a lot easier. So like I said, it fuels you, it fuels your courage, and it makes you want to stand up for things that you believe in, because you have people who are supporting you. Sort of like you have a group of people pushing you up at the back of you. So that makes having courage a lot easier. It fuels your courage as you are able to face anything in the sake of your organization. Okay, so an example of this, which I also took from this textbook, is an example of Daniel Lynch, CEO of Imclone. When he took over the top job, things were about as bad as they could get. Founder Sam Waxel had been hauled off in handcuffs for alleged insider trading. The financial state of the company was in shambles, and the company's application for Food and Drug Administration FDA approval of key cancer drug had just been rejected. Over a 2-year period, Lynch led a remarkable turnaround by focusing on getting the financial house in order, restoring trust among employees, and getting approval for Erbitax, I believe that's the drug, which he believed could dramatically help people with colorectal cancer. Lynch didn't hesitate to tell people he needed their help, and managers and employees rose to the challenge. For 2 years, bad news just kept coming, but people pulled together, kept pushing forward, even though many of them said that sometimes they felt like running away from the task. So yeah, it's all about having people who have the courage to support you. Really makes you feel a lot more brave, a lot more courageous. Like in this instance, he didn't give up, and he reached out to the people, and that's the caring for others things. When you live well with others and people see that how passionate you are and how passionate you are about their relationship, it also helps with their support. May I please have the next slide? And welcoming failure. So in the text, there was a quote by Walt Disney, but I went on the internet and I found this one that I liked a lot better. It said, "All the adversity I've had in my life, all my troubles and obstacles have strengthened me. You may not realize it when it happens, but a kick in the teeth may be the best thing in the world for you." So I went on to say that failure shapes us for a future of challenges. We've continuously spoke of courage through taking risk throughout this entire chapter. And another one of these components is understanding that failure fuels greatness. So I don't know if that has happened to you or anyone in the class. Excuse me. I don't know if that has happened to anyone in the class, but sometimes when things get harder, we face different hardships. I tend to always want to throw in the towel, like always. But somehow that failure will always be a lesson. It would always help you to be greater. It would always make things, not things easier per se, because in life there's a lot of challenges, but it will make navigating through different challenges a lot, I don't know, it will help you to get through it a lot better. And instead of viewing failure as something negative, turn it into a positive and just look at it as the betterment of yourself. So that is welcoming failure and having the courage to even do that, having the courage to even say that, okay, this is it. This is it. This was it. I took a L. Now I just need to get up and move on and keep pushing. May I please have the next slide? Okay, harnessing frustration and anger. When I saw this and I read into it, I didn't quite understand it at first. But when I took a second read, the saying that pressure makes diamonds comes into mind, and you will understand this better when I read the example. That was really good from the text. Okay, so before I get into that, I was said, ever heard of this saying? Yes, well, pressure makes diamond. Well, that is what it means to harness your frustration and anger. Out of those things can stem beautiful ideas and ventures that can allow you to live a bountiful, and fulfilling life. So the example is with Miss Glenn McIntyre. Oh, Mr. Sorry. Used his anger and frustration to start a new life and a new business. After he was paralyzed in a motorcycle accident, McIntyre first used his anger to overcome thoughts of suicide and begin intensive physical therapy. Later, frustration over how poorly hotels served handicapped guests led him to start consulting firms. A consultant firm called Access Design. The firm helps hotels such as Quality Suites and Renaissance Ramada redesign their space to be more usable for disabled travelers. So yes, when you are feeling frustrated or angry about something, instead of using it to be just that or act on that, you can take control of it and use it and actually use your frustration and your anger to help. For the life of me, I could not understand what they were trying to say, because when you're frustrated and you're angry, like the way how they made it seem in the book is like, how could you even control that and control it to the point where you could actually let your anger help you? So in this case, when he was frustrated and he used his anger about him being paralyzed to get over the thoughts of suicide and stuff, and in frustration, through his frustration, he opened up a new business. So that's what it essentially says. It helps you to live a fulfilling life afterwards. Though you may feel angry and frustrated, if you use that and you use it well, it can become this beautiful diamond. So overall, I would just like to say that moral leadership and courage is essentially having the internal power to differentiate what is right from wrong, okay, and to be able to have the courage to call people out on it and call yourself out on it. Because I personally believe that is one of the key things. I believe that, and it says it in the presentation, that if you are not aware of yourself, you cannot make, like, not really accusations, but you cannot understand why people practice what they're doing and why people do this and why people do that. So you first have to understand yourself. So you have to learn and to understand courage, find that courage within yourself, and just know that you can take risk and being ethical. It may have a lot of technicalities, but when you actually work towards it, it's not that hard to have. And yeah, that is it for the presentation. Thank you very much. I do in thumbs up like you all could see it, but
All right, are there any questions?
I like questions. You all have no questions?
Any
Which one's
questions?
gonna start? Everything is crystal clear.
Okay, well, that sounds excellent.
Actually, yes, everything is crystal clear, you know. You guys did an excellent job.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, bro.
And the examples were great and helped to like help me to be able to translate them or transfer them into ideas that I could understand or concepts, visualizations that I could understand. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate the approach that you all took.
Yeah, that though going into it, I found the text was all I saw was words when I went on that is sometimes what hinder me from actually wanting to get into stuff like this. But when I did the examples and stuff in the textbook, really helped me to understand where this topic was, what was about, and where it was coming from. So yeah, I'm really glad that you guys enjoyed it. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
What I could say is that it's all making sense in the and I'm coming from the direction of each presentation that's done, you know, every week. They all tie into each other, you know, and it's making the course make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yes. 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 Yes.
So yeah.
I believe that Mr. Bisso truly know what he's doing.
Yeah.
Well,
Totally
right.
agree.
Okay. So on that note, I'm going to pause the recording for this group. Thank
So
you
I
very
could
much,
stop,
guys.
I could stop presenting, all right, sir?
Yes, you can.
Okay.